But very simply, Joe Biden could have done this right.
Easily.
Yeah.
What would he have done different? Or in your opinion, anyway, Forrest?
I'm going to build a foundation for this one first. This is going to be about a 3-minute kind of piece.
Let's
do it.
But it's going to require layers. So if you're looking at the situation in Afghanistan, you're looking at multiple layers of problems, multiple layers of failures. One of them being, this is going to piss off a lot of people, but generally speaking, Afghanistan is a failed state. So it's not a unified people. It doesn't have a unified government. It's constantly in a state of upheaval. Right, so if you're going to look at countries like China, America, Russia, Germany, Great Britain, Mexico, even Afghanistan culturally does not have the unity that even America has in our own fractured nonsense, right? So for them as a culture, some of it is still very much so. I'm really only loyal to my tribe, which makes sense. But they don't have the kind of trickling up effect of at least some sense of loyalty or some sense of unified cultural identity. There are a lot of spurious connections between them, but there's not a single unified cultural identity in there. Some of this is because of things that we just don't understand in the West, and some of them are things that are a little bit more nuanced than just tribalism. But there are issues within the Afghan culture that which we saw because we spent 20 years and we spent all this time and money building an American or an Afghan military, and as soon as they saw the Taliban coming, they're like, here's the guns, we're good. They gave up the weapons. So that's the first layer. The second layer is that so much of the American military's leadership was more concerned about the opinions of people that don't even like them or are actively working against them. They're so worried about American news agencies writing hit pieces on them because then their political career is done. Because once you get past a certain level in the American military on the officer scale, you become an inherently political position. And so the American body politic.
I mean, at this point, it's you get that first. I mean, you become an officer, you're a politician.
Exactly. Well, I don't even know what the lieutenant looks like anymore, but I would expect so because if you're going to put that much investment into it, you have to be at least hoping to look far enough in that you're going to go on for like a colonel and move your way up there. And then the third part that comes into this one is the American cultural issue of we didn't, as a culture, come to terms with what we were trying to accomplish there, nor did we as a culture believe in our own values enough to try to transpose them into this country. If we think certain things are good, like we're not even going to like representative government as a value, we did not pass that on to the Afghan people, or they did not root it in. They did not take root of that. So we were talking about Afghanistan as a multi-layered problem. You're dealing with bureaucrats making rules of engagement for the people who are on the ground. In the words of a good friend of mine, you have people who are non-threats. And what I mean by non-threat is, they have no strategic value. They have no. If an opposing force were to encounter them, they wouldn't even take them seriously, right? So this person is so disconnected from the American military, the concept of war, but somehow they're being allowed to make rules of engagement for Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Delta Force guys, where now you've got the guys who signed the paper, chose to do it, and don't get me wrong, it's those people are responsible too because they listened to bad leadership if they did, and it's not just a blanket statement, well, the leadership is bad, because you're your own person. American rugged individualism begins at the person, and the American military gave that up as the American culture has been giving that up. So layer one, Afghanistan was never going to become a glorious utopia. Layer two, the more concerned about what my American constituents are going to say. And then layer three is on a cultural level, we gave up the fact that I as an individual, it's my responsibility. If I'm the one carrying the firearm, I am the one who's responsible for it. And it's not that the people on the ground gave that up, it's that their political leadership took that from them. Going back to Nicholas Nassim Taleb, if you want to read 3 books of his, Black Swan, Anti-Fragile, Skin in the Game. Skin in the game means if I'm the guy on the ground, I know that I can make decisions because I know that if I'm looking at a combatant or non-combatant, I can make that decision. If my leadership does not believe that I can make that decision, but instead puts rules of engagement, which I don't even get to engage that part of my mind, then they have failed. The apparatus that is the American concept of war failed in Afghanistan, which is no surprise why China would be willing to push it.
Yeah, this is also covered in the concept of the strategic E4, right? The idea that when you look at some of this stuff from a fourth generation warfare perspective, the idea that optics are warfare, right? So suddenly an E4, tip of the spear, right? You're thinking, oh, well, I'm the bottom of this echelon. I have this whole hierarchy above me, giving me the rules of order, to making these strategic decisions, giving me commander's intent. But instead, because you're the one who's there, and then you've got someone on the other side that's taking your picture or that's portraying your actions or misportraying your actions, right? You are now the face of U.S. government policy. You're the face of the, or in their terms, the way they would like to portray it, of course, as the evil Western occupying empire that is crushing their land for 20 years. And let's face it, if you were someone in Afghanistan who's 18 years old right now, right, you don't know what 9/11 was. That's like something you read about, or maybe you saw a video of, but you just know that you've been living in a country your entire life as you've been growing up and seeing foreign soldiers walking around, occupying your country, telling your government what to do. And then you've got some people saying, oh, just go along with them, even though they don't speak your language, they don't have your values, they don't share your religion, they don't share your culture. And then you've got another group that says, no, follow us, let's get rid of them.
Let's talk about the rules of engagement, though. Let's talk. Have you guys, I'm assuming you probably have, experienced things where it's like, it makes no sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Elaborate.
Forrest Cooper, team leader 2013, was explained that I have to tell the people that I'm in charge of. I'm a team leader. I'm in charge of guys. I have to explain to them that in the event there's a man standing in his doorway with a belt-fed machine gun shooting at your people, we are not allowed to return fire with effective weaponry because there's the possibility that somebody might be standing behind him in his house.
What?
Yep.
A belt-fed machine gun in his door.
Yep. And so the appropriate response at that time was to pull back to a safe situation where you can contain it without receiving effective fire. Okay, now we're using military jargon. Well, you can contain the situation without receiving effective fire, which is anywhere between 50 yards and 300 yards or whatever, and then wait for him to stop shooting.
That's amazing.
How?
Well, I mean, they run out eventually.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Okay, so let's make another very important distinction. When your job is you are in a special operations unit and you're tasked with performing things like a night raid, where you go, we're going to go after, perfect, most famous night raid ever, going after Osama bin Laden, right? So if they had told the guys going after Osama bin Laden that you're not allowed to shoot unless you're being shot at, okay, think about that dynamic really quickly.
Yeah.
You're being employed by the American military to go after a specific target, but you're supposed to also act like you're a beat cop in Chicago, and you're not allowed to actually engage with the targets that you know are armed and preparing to fight against you until you have some sort of check mark from somebody else who has no skin in the game that confirms that you have received effective fire from somebody.
This is really interesting. We were looking at this graph the other day that Lydia had pulled up showing the different jobs by political affiliation. Mm-hmm. And it's like, Army Ranger probably tends to be more conservative. And then bureaucrat who sets policy for Army Ranger probably tends to be more liberal or something to that effect. You're going to get people who don't do the job telling you how to do the job.
Dude, they commanded you to, as a tactic, a battle tactic, is wait for the enemy to stop fighting. That was your tactic.
That's a great tactic.
That was also our strategy.
It wasn't.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't a tactic. It was enforced by law. If I broke that because I was like, oh, well, you know what? I'm a designated marksman. I know that I can make this shot at this yardage, and I know that I'm not being shot at right now. I am fully trained and confident in that ability, have the equipment, and the situation that presents it. If I even completed that, then I would go home from the mission and have to face but I have to face an entire, effectively, court appearance overseas by Americans basically trying to figure out whether or not they can throw me in.
Is this does this happen where someone
and by the way, you've probably got 3 or 4 activist JAGs looking to make rank that look at you and say, aha, we've got a situation where somebody broke the rules. They're not looking at what your mission was or what your objective was or what the context of that particular objective was. They're looking at how can I make rank as a JAG, that's a military lawyer, by going after somebody, prosecuting them, and winning.
Precisely.
So you could save 3 people's lives, and then they would persecute.
Irrelevant.
Does that happen?
That's completely irrelevant.
You didn't save their lives. You just failed to accidentally hurt them.
Right.
If there was going to be a firefight and the guy with the machine gun was going to mow down 3 of your guys, and then they were going to mow him down, but you prevented that by sniping the guy.
How'd you know he was going to attack your people?
Yeah, right. There's no way to know. He's
wasn't
opening fire with a
those
machine
people.
gun. How do we know that he's trying to hurt someone?
But what if he's got a machine gun and he's like literally feeding the belt in it while staring at you frantically?
Do people go through this court process knowing that they save people's lives by disobeying an order, and they're like, you know what, I did the right thing, and then they get their careers trashed and they're thrown in prison? And
Yes.
They do not care. They do not care.
Remember, there was even, I mean, it goes even further
I'm
than
not
this with, I don't know how much we can talk about I don't even know how to say it, but basically there was a situation where there would be underage boys on and around U.S. military bases, and I'm trying to be very YouTube friendly with this.
Oh, yeah.
And we know, and there are specific terms for that. I have no idea whether YouTube has an issue with the Afghani terms for that.
Yeah, probably.
But just not going to say it.
It's horrifying stuff, man.
But there would be times where, and I'm sure you know these stories as well, where U.S. soldiers would say, I can't take this anymore. I can't live with myself. And they would step up and try to stop it. Times where it was happening.
Where young boys are being abused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boys were being abused, but it was known about. They were told to shut up about it. The New York Times has covered this extensively. This was being done by Afghan military officers, police officers, and even times where people would lose their careers, get prosecuted for getting involved with this and trying to stop it. Right. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to stop them. So not even talking about rules of engagement, which is obviously a completely separate thing. This is just, right and wrong kind of stuff. And they said, well, that's just a cultural difference. You just, you have to let them.
Is that what we're trying to prop up?
You're a company commander. You're in charge of 130 guys plus a couple of more. And then your company is attached to a Afghan company, and you're supposed to be working with each other. They're attached to you. Fine. And you because you understand that you need to integrate your forces so that they can work well together. Otherwise, it's just going to be 2 completely useless bodies one's going to be very useful and one's going to be very lost. You can figure that out for yourself. Land Nav is not an officer specialty. But you can take this issue and you're working with...
Some of us can read compasses.
In 1970? Oh. So, back to the joke. I went to Ranger School. I know how that works. But so in that one, you have a host nation cohort, and they're participating in not just casual corruption, like issues where it's not just money being exchanged, but many, many worse things. And instead of being able to say, this is not what we're going to represent to our country, we're not going to because they're inherently a reflection on you. If the Americans protect the people who do the bad things, then they are in part and parcel responsible for it, at least within the cultural concept. And so when you as a commander say, we're going to put a stop to this in this connected force, and you get sidelined because it wasn't politically operative or optimal, that's what you're dealing with.
Right.
Yep.
Man.
Virtue be damned.
War is messed up for a lot of
reasons. So you
reasons.
talk about the PTSD ramifications of that. You talk about the 22 veteran suicides a day. That obviously this is something that's driving. And you're right, by the way. That is the different cultural values. It is a very Western cultural value that if you see something, say something. How many times do we say that, right? But that's not the same in all cultures, right? In other cultures, they'll say, well, I don't know that person and I'm not involved in that, so why should I get involved?
We would encounter villages, towns, and areas where a person would be targeted. Our person would be targeted because he was 100% confirmed being a bomb manufacturer intended to do harm on whoever, right? They have their little compound with their walls, and in that compound they're building explosives for the purpose of maiming and killing American soldiers and Afghan citizens. Their neighbor will know about it and say, it's not on my property, so I don't care.
Correct.
I do not care that my neighbor Oh yeah, my neighbor, and well, that's one dynamic, right? They'll be like, oh yeah, my neighbor works for the Taliban. He builds bombs, and you're like, thanks. But then you also have to deal with the secondary layer of, you and I are neighbors. You're the American government, and you and I are in a feud. And I'll be like, I want some of his land, but I won't tell you that. I'll be like, yeah, he builds bombs, and so right. So that's
like the Soviet Union. My friends who are from there have said similar stories where, I was hanging out in an apartment and my friend told me that she's like, hey, the apartment next to this one, back during the Soviet Union, there were two neighbors and they were feuding with each other. So the person who lived here just called the Communist Party and said they were bad mouthing the party, and a day later their apartment was empty.
Yep,
it's a nightmarish way to live, man. War screwed up.
Because you're talking about values. You talked about an American value, at least a Western value, is this idea that we know our neighbors and we at least hold them to a certain level of accountability. To some extent, at least to some, that might
be. Like if you're in the U.S., right, and I see my next door neighbor like beating their dog or something, or their kid or whatever it is, like you're going to call the cops.
Most likely.
Yeah, you are going, 9 times out of 10, someone in the U.S. is going to say, all right, I'm going to pick up the phone and do something about that because that's wrong, right? I see that's wrong. Other parts of the world, it's, hey, that's their dog, that's their kid. Maybe they did something wrong.
And there's a left and right limit to that for sure. Because then you run into, the Minneapolis problem of, well, they didn't have a Black Lives Matter flag outside their house, so let's burn it down next time.
Well, you've seen like the riots in Hamburg during, I think it was the G20 or whatever. All the windows are smashed out except for one. There's a photo. All the windows smashed out except for one, and it's got the communist fist in the window. That's the one that gets left alone. But
I've been studying a lot of like war history, and a lot of times it's like, the army goes into the city, they kill most of the male fighters, and then they rape the women and pillage and burn the city. This doesn't always happen, but it was pretty frequent, like normal. The commander would be like, okay, he lets his troops pillage because if he doesn't, they're going to mutiny and kill him. So he lets his troops. But we've like gone the opposite direction with like the Geneva Convention and the American military prim and proper, like making sure you don't upset your foes before you kill them. And I wonder if we've gone too far. Like war, the one that tries to fight with honor is the one that loses. I mean, we learned that in the Revolutionary War. You see that in World War I.
I wouldn't be so cynical as not willing to fight with honor. I think that's a bit of a hypersimplification.
Okay, you're definitely.
So an example of an example of what your metaphor, your example does come out is, so you go into an Afghan town, you kick down a door, and you find the character that you were looking for. Now you have to pay the family, the American equivalent of the fanciest door, to the family because you kicked down the door. Because could you have done it without kicking down the door? Like, dude, he's a terrorist. Why do I have to pay the family for the door? Well, because you did damage to the property. Like, we were going after him because he was facilitating insert one of these issues. He was doing one of these things. Like, we didn't just go after him willy-nilly because his name is whatever. It's, you go after a guy, he's building bombs, he's facilitating fighters, he's recruiting, he's whatever. I mean, you could figure out any of the answer. So you go into the village, you have your target structure, you hit the building, and then afterwards you're like, well, now we have to pay the family for the door.
Well, American police don't, if they kick a door down, they don't pay for the door.
Oh,
of American citizens.
Would you look at that? American police and military differences.
There's a lot of big ethical and moral questions that arise from what's going on in Afghanistan. And the first is, you mentioned the horrible things that they do. They have this really disgusting practice that we can't really talk about on YouTube, but it's child abuse. And
actually that's one of the things, just to get into the more complexity of it, that's one of the things that the Taliban was against. And so one of the ways that they originally in Mullah Omar and Kandahar were rising to power was because they were essentially, they would find out about stuff like that going on and then execute people in the streets. And so people would say, they were so sick of it, they'd say, okay, well, let's go for this extreme reaction. Let's join in with these guys because at least they'll do something about it.
Well, so I think about the U.S. being in this foreign land where a bunch of people don't like them, as you pointed out. They don't speak the language. They don't even look like you. They're a bunch of imperial, powerful troopers who come in and tell you how to live and what you have to do. And there were people who were there who were like, no way. They were going to resist by any means necessary. The problem I see is I don't think we should have been there. If we wanted to go after Al-Qaeda, that I understand. Sticking around for nation building and occupying this country results in people resisting you. And for all of the really horrifying things I would personally wish they were not doing, I don't know if that is justification for the U.S. being the world police for every single issue like that. Because if we were going to go into every country where they had a problem like that, we'd be occupying the North Africa for everything that's happening, like with the slave trade now in Libya.
I could sit here for hours and tell you about country after country that's conducting some kind of moral atrocity, and there's always going to be a Rwanda out there.
If we're going to go after somebody, though, we better go after them. That's the issue that I have. This is where I come from, the on the ground guy, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, again, if you've trained guys, you spend millions of dollars to train dudes to be really good at what they're doing. Where the American,
and this was the initial initial operations in Afghanistan. October 2011 was just that.
Look at those kind of things, right? Like, look at the abilities of the American warfighter.
Jawbreaker, right?
I don't remember, because if we're talking about like 2001,
it's like Jawbreaker, Anaconda, like some of those really early.
And I was really young,
of course.
And I will not pretend to be the most astute historian in American military history, because especially when you look at the global war on terror, it gets bigger the more you look into it.
Oh yeah.
But a very simple answer is, you let the people who you've trained to do the job do the job. You do not put artificial barriers for them. So when we're talking about Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Delta Force, Special Forces guys, it's like, okay, what's the mission? Dismantle the Taliban's network in this area. Okay, go do that, and go do that to the best of your ability, and just keep doing that until you've accomplished the dissolution of the Taliban network. No, we don't really want to go after the Taliban network anymore. Now we want to engage in nation building because it looks better for our constituents.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.